This Sega Saturn was donated to me by Mike Dailey, the man who wrote Lemmings. It's a bit of a state and we don't know if it works. But brimming with confidence, I've bought a Fenrir optical drive emulator so we can play games from SD cards. I sure hope we can fix it now. Let's find out right now. Mark fixes stuff. This video is sponsored by Altium. Altium Designer empowers you to create PCB designs with an intuitive and powerful interface, connecting you to every aspect of the electronics design process. With over 35 years of innovations, Altium Designer is the most widely used and trusted PCB design solution on Earth. Click the link below to claim your free trial and start your Altium Designer journey today. Armed with a dodgy CRT and no remote, a cheapo RGB SCART cable from Amazon, and a dusty musty Sega Saturn from Mr. Lemmings himself, we set up to test. Neil from RMC gave me this telly, but I don't have the remote so I can't turn off the on-screen display. Sorry. Turning on the Saturn, we get a solid black screen. Not a great start, but something. Nope. Looking at the reset button, it looks like the button is either broken or stuck. I wonder if that has something to do with the black screen. Let's magnetise our screwdriver and get right into that unit. Ready for action. We'll disconnect the cables before we open up the case. There's only 5 screws holding a Sega Saturn together. I'm hoping that we find something obvious inside the machine once we get it open. All the screws are handily the same size. Okay, it's the big reveal and... well, it all looks pretty standard with nothing mushy or wet. This is the cover for the battery and M.P.E.G card compartment. We'll pop it to one side for now. The compartment is in its back side. If you had an M.P.E.G module you'd slip it in here, but we just need to replace the missing battery today. There's also a mod to change the save RAM to FRAM, meaning no battery required, but I don't have that mod here today. Aha, a sign that someone's been in here before. This crack doesn't affect the board though, we'll fix that with some glue later. The power switch action is fine, no rust. But looking over at the ribbon cable, we can see that not only has someone removed this before, but they've left it disconnected from the drive. I'm not going to reconnect the drive yet. First I want to see if this reset button is the cause of the black screen. It seems to have a good action with the case off. Let's do a quick test with the case off to see if anything has changed since we released that reset button. Hitting the power button once more, I'm not expecting much, but the mainboard springs into life. Amazing! It looks like a jammed reset button was the cause of the black screen. Let's confirm that theory by holding the reset button down and powering up again. Yep, a black screen. And releasing the button allows the console to boot. We're going to need some way of controlling our console, so I've bought this Retrobit wired controller from eBay. Officially licensed no less. It was only about £24 delivered, so I'm not really expecting too much. First impressions are that it looks pretty snazzy. I'm a sucker for transparent electronics though, as you are probably aware. We can use the controller to get past the time and date setting screen. Then we can see if we can get to the drive access screen on the console. I've not put a battery in yet, so there's no point putting the real date and time. And good news, because the console goes to the disk boot section of the BIOS. It'll just sit checking disk format forever because the drive's unplugged, but now we know the console works, we can test the drive mechanism without fear of introducing further errors. The drive cable looks okay, so we'll just slip it in using our fingers to keep it stiff. These can be difficult because they're quite floppy by nature. And since we found that that cable was disconnected, let's just check the other cables are all in place. With all the cables present and correct, it's time to power on and see if we get any response from the drive. That flashing is a good sign, and it means that the console thinks that the drive door is open, a sensor fed from the drive board. Pressing the door switch simulates a closed lid and makes the laser lens look for any media present. If it were to see a disc at this point, its logic would tell it to spin that disc up. So now we need a disc. In my box of charred salvage I have a single Sega Saturn game. Yikes. This copy of Clockwork Knight was in a game case that was partially burned, but perhaps it's okay enough to boot. First we need to give it a clean. I use window cleaner and a lint-free cloth for this. Now the data side. When cleaning CDs you should wipe from the centre outwards to avoid scratching along the length of the data track. That's some pretty significant heat damage to the disc, and you can see the mottling in the polycarbonate resin of the underside. Well, in for a penny, in for a good old pounding. Let's give it a go. I really thought that the laser would be dead in this unit, hence finding it unplugged, but to my surprise the drive not only sees the disc, but spins it up and detects that it's a bootable application. Pressing A to start the application delivers another shock. The disc actually boots. Furthermore, the console starts the game with the FMV running smoothly and the game loading as if it was still the mid-1990s. This is one resilient disc. I'm impressed. Pressing start to see how far the game would load took us into the first level, and I tried a bit of playing with just one hand. Naturally I died quickly, but my point was proven. The game works. With our investigations finding that there really wasn't anything much wrong with the console or its drive, I started feeling a bit guilty about what I had planned next. This is the Fenrir, an optical drive emulator that replaces the drive mechanism in the Sega Saturn. The Fenrir means that we don't need discs anymore. What a relief. This is the 20-pin version, and inside the box you get the Fenrir itself. A very understated and classy Fenrir sticker. and a very simple 3D printed mount that we won't be using today. I found a nicer style of mount on the internet. It's a bit more complex, so I printed one of those instead. Link to the STL file below. Well, in truth, this was my third attempt, but it came out well enough in the end, I think. I quite like this. The Fenrir should just clip in. Opening up the anti-static bag, we can see that the Fenrir itself is actually quite a simple beast. There's an expressive ESP32 doing all the grunt work. This one has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built in. A pretty standard power socket and LED with a latching flat cable socket. I like these. And the back looks like a Spinal Tap album. None more black. Let's fit this. Lining up the transflash socket with the slot on our holder, the Fenrir board clips easily into place. You could use some double-sided tape if your unit isn't as snug a fit as mine is. We need to remove the data cable from the drive, followed by the drive power cable and lid detection sensor cable respectively. With the cables unplugged, we can lift up the drive mechanism. This gives us access to unscrew this earth bonding strap from beneath its base. Just loosen the screw enough to remove the strap, and then tighten the screw back up. With the drive removed, I'll store it to be used with another needy console. This is the micro SD card that we'll be using, and I just want to check that it fits into the socket through the slot in the new mount. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that. The 3D printed mount simply fits onto the 4 posts like so. We'll just use the existing 20-way cable, bending it over so that the blue line meets the flat socket like this. The lid detection switch isn't needed for the Fenrir, so we'll just connect the power to the board. With the board installed, I need to pop out this button cover. I want to be able to guide the reset button post through the hole in the case and not allow it to become trapped again like it did last time. And I think we can see what happened before. Sorted. The 3D printed mount is sitting flush with the case, and I think it looks pretty good. Clipping our button back in and giving it a check shows that it now has a nice springy action. Perfect. Let's put the Saturn back together. I'm not cleaning the console yet because in the next video we're going to strip it all down and mod the main board anyway. I hope you're enjoying this video. It's made possible by my fabulous Patreon supporters. You can become one at patreon.com/MarkFixesStuff, where you can learn about patron benefits, including ad-free versions of all my videos and a dedicated Discord chat, and most of all, helping to make these videos happen. Hope to see you there. Let's install a new CR2032 battery so we don't need to set the time and date with each power on. These are really bloody hard to get into. The battery simply slides in and is pushed down until it snaps into position. Not forgetting to put that expansion cover back on. Our reset button is springy, our power button was always fine, and our Fenrir is installed. Now we just need to sort out the memory card. The Fenrir can take any size, but I have a 64GB, so that's what we'll use. I like to use Rufus for formatting removable media. I find it more reliable, especially when we're using SD cards. The card formats quickly, so I copy across a selection of disk images. I use European, Japanese and US versions to test the Fenrir's automatic region patching. Time to test. Here goes. With the new battery, we just need to set the language, date and time. Yes, it is gone 2 in the morning here. The Saturn runs through its BIOS animation, checks the disk drive, and boots. The firmware shipped on the Fenrir is older than Stonehenge, but I do try a game before updating. Cotton 2 is compatible with the 1 and 4 megabit RAM cards, which I don't have. Oh Japan, every time. The game runs great and is really beautiful. I wonder what the RAM enhancements are. Probably faster loading. If you remove the SD card and boot, you get this info screen, which reminds me to update the firmware. You just download the update.bin and place it into the root of the SD card. When you reboot, you'll get the checking disk message. Don't panic and just run the application, and soon you'll boot into the shiny new firmware. I also added a few more game images. The latest firmware features cover art, in-game reset, backup and restore options for the internal memory, and a really comprehensive system information page. I spent a good few hours trying all the games that I copied onto the card. Everything worked. FMV was smooth and music and sound effects were in sync with the games, well, as far as I could tell. I couldn't play Death Tanks Y though because it's 2-player, and I don't have any friends. Okay, I must admit that I was a PlayStation owner back in the day and I wasn't very impressed by the Saturn's 3D capabilities. Looking at the games now though, they are excellent and the 2D stuff in particular really shines. Even in 3D it looks better than I remember from the 90s, but then I was viewing it through some PlayStation coloured goggles. In addition, it felt like some of the games had a real feeling of heart, something lacking from some of the Sony offerings. And of course, what's the point of having a Saturn unless you can play a compilation of 8-bit MSX1 games from Konami? I do love Parodius though, even if it gets ridiculously hard, ridiculously quickly. What a great game. I never looked twice at Daytona USA on the Saturn back in the day. But now it seems like I really missed out. The game's fluid, it handles great, and frankly the game is excellent fun. I tend to favour a hand-picked selection of games on my optical drive emulators, and for that a 64GB card is probably enough for me. I much prefer games that I'll play over every game ever. As an example of a game that I'll play, this is supposedly the best 90s version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, a game I adored on the PlayStation. I'll definitely be playing this a lot on my Fenrir equipped Saturn now. So what's next? Well, this Saturn needs a really good cleanup, and the Fenrir can't switch 50 and 60Hz for the correct NTSC game speeds, so we'll be fitting this switchless mod in the next video and doing some game comparisons. I bought the Fenrir and I love it. You can't get a more unbiased review than that. A massive grateful thanks to my amazing patrons. You can join them at patreon.com/MarkFixesStuff. I'll see you all in the next video. Cue patron roll. Come on.